The girl was shocked to find that the enemy's army had come to her door. What made her even more desperate was that they were forcibly occupying a room for the upcoming officer to live in. When she thought of the invader wanting to live in her own house, the girl was full of hatred for the unfaced officer. However, the enemy's choice was exactly the room of Jenny's parents. Although her parents had long passed away in this war, she and her grandfather were the only ones left to depend on. But she would clean the room every day. It was as if her parents' figure still existed, but now this only thought has been mercilessly trampled. This made her hatred for the enemy's officers even stronger. But as a civilian who had lost the war, she could only swallow her resentment and anger. Perhaps this repression and pain were too heavy. The winter in France was extremely cold this year. Even if the fire was fierce, it could not dispel the coldness in the house. In order to find a little consolation for each other's souls, Jenny played a prelude to Bach. The melancholy melody flowed slowly in the cold air. It seemed to speak of endless grief and longing. But at this time, the two grandchildren were completely unaware. A car was coming slowly. Perhaps because the sound of the piano was too charming, she unknowingly slowed down. It was as if she was afraid of disturbing this beauty. After a long time, she gently opened the door. However, the moment her figure appeared, the original melodious sound of the piano stopped. Jenny's eyes were full of panic and anger. Silence became her weapon against the enemy. However, it was completely different from the Nazis she had imagined. She was polite and fluent in French. Her words were full of helplessness and remorse. She explained that she was following the orders of her superiors. If it weren't for the military order, she would never have disturbed their original tranquility. In the face of the military officer's sincere words, the two grandchildren still kept silent, and Wona had no choice but to accept it. Then Jenny took her to her parents' room. Wona looked around and was very satisfied. But as soon as she wanted to express her gratitude, Jenny fell directly at the door and defended her dignity with determination. But Wona didn't get angry because of this. She still greeted the cat every day. Good morning and good night never fall, sincere thanks and acceptance. It's just that whenever she speaks, her eyes always stay on Jenny. But no matter how enthusiastic Wona is, the two grandchildren are always cold to each other. After Wona left, the grandfather looked at the cold atmosphere in the room and wanted his granddaughter to play Bach's prelude. As a result, Jenny refused without thinking. As long as he's here, I won't play. The barrier of hatred seemed unbreakable. However, the gears of fate kept turning. On this day, Jenny went to the town as usual to purchase supplies. But when she returned home, she found that the parked bicycle had been stolen. She had no choice but to walk home. Soon, blisters appeared on her feet. She was so embarrassed that she took a rest on the spot. Coincidentally, Wona's car passed by. She sincerely invited Jenny to get in the car and go home together. After a moment of hesitation, Jenny picked up the bag next to her and walked slowly towards Wona's car. Wona saw this and happily opened the door. She was waiting to welcome this noble lady to get in the car, but Jenny passed by Wona's side. Wona followed behind quietly and saw the unyielding expression on her face. She knew in her heart that she would definitely not get in the car, so she let her subordinates leave. On the way back, Jenny met a boy who had been chasing her. Maybe the pain in her feet was unbearable. Jenny thought about it over and over again. In the end, she still got into the boy's car. However, along the way, the boy and his friends glared at each other with impolite eyes. This made Jenny resentful. In her mind, Wona invited herself to get in the car. In contrast, the gap between the two was clear at a glance. Gradually, Jenny had more expectations for Wona, but that day, Wona didn't greet her as usual but stopped going upstairs. But she changed her clothes and knocked on the door. Good evening. Excuse me, but my room is very cold. If you allow me, I would like to warm up a few minutes in your fire. This was Wona's first time in the living room. The two grandchildren in the room still maintained their old attitude. They didn't say a word about her arrival. Wona didn't feel embarrassed. She walked to the edge of the stove and began to talk to herself. She said that she would miss her hometown, but now her hometown is far away. Then she walked to the bookshelf and touched the work of the bookshelf and sighed that French literature was like a sea of smoke. Each book contained a unique world. Then she played music and Bach. She played those elegant music sheets. As she played, her soul shone. At that moment, the war seemed to be far away. The melody of Bach became a secret tie that connected their souls. Since then, Wona came here every day and shared her feelings for everything in the world. When she played the sea, her eyes always contained a deep desire for you. In her words, it was full of poetic and profound meaning. I don't talk about learning about research. I talk about what is hidden and what we define. Maybe what she wants to say is, if there was no war, they would have become best friends. She said she was happy to see an old man with dignity and a silent lady. Jenny listened to Wona's long words and seemed to have an inexplicable excitement in her heart. At that moment, there was a subtle change between the two of them. One day, Jenny accidentally saw her neighbor's child fall down. Fortunately, Wona was quick-witted and rushed to hug the child. She then whispered to her neighbor. This time, Jenny realized Wona's different side. Maybe she really hates war and is kind. Out of curiosity, Jenny pulled the neighbor's child and asked Wona what he said. This sentence touched Jenny's heart deeply. She began to appreciate Wona's shining point. After that, Jenny unconsciously began to care about her image. Every night, she had an inexplicable expectation and would quietly light it up. Under Wona's eyes, a handsome and elegant face. With time, Jenny's eyes turned from cold to warm. On Christmas Day, Jenny wore a beautiful long dress and enjoyed a warm dinner with her grandfather. Wona came in and broke the silence. Jenny hurriedly grabbed the tablecloth. When she heard that Wona was just here to change clothes, she immediately left and let go of her hand. That day, her grandfather was taken by a friend to pray. Jenny and Wona were the only ones left in the house. When they met in the small room, Wona took a moment to slowly walk towards Jenny, but she only dared to sit lightly on her back, afraid of breaking the subtle atmosphere. After that, she walked to the piano and played Bach's favorite music. When Wona sat down, Jenny still didn't respond. Her eyes didn't fall on her, and the sound of the piano rang out. Wona closed her eyes and sank into it. The sound of the piano was like a storm, like a flood of emotions. The invisible force of music penetrated the heart and cleverly broke the gap between the two people, as if the ice melted into a gentle sea water. Wona looked at Jenny, who was leaning on the sofa, with an impulsive courage in her heart. Her eyes were attracted by her green hair and snow-white skin, and her hands were moved forward by emotions. Jenny remained silent. When Wona was about to touch her, her hands were half empty. She hesitated, afraid of breaking the calm, leaving a sentence, and finally turned away. As soon as Wona left, Jenny sneaked into her room, took up the scarf she usually used, and couldn't help but secretly open her letter to find out more about her. After reading it, Jenny buried her face in the pillow and was immersed in her own scent. But Jenny was full of contradictions. On the one hand, there was national hatred, like Gao Xuan, who always warned her not to forget her identity and mission. On the other hand, there was the true love of the girl, like the warm spring sun, which made it difficult for her to resist the desire in her heart. This entanglement was like a thorn in the throat. Jenny fell asleep in this self-pulling. Not long after, the sound of the car outside the house woke her up. She hurriedly put the letter back in its place. Unexpectedly, a gust of wind blew the letter down. At this moment, Wona was in a hurry and caught a faint movement in front of Jenny's door. She instinctively wanted to push the door to see what was going on, and Jenny behind the door was looking forward to Wona's approach and was nervous. In the end, Wona still overcame her impulsiveness. After returning to the room, Wona saw the letter on the floor and the complex emotions in her heart. She realized that Jenny might be in the same emotion as her, so she desperately wanted to find an exact answer. She came to the seaside to find Jenny and wanted to express her feelings. When she saw Wona in front of her, Jenny's heart was in a state of panic. She accidentally knocked over the fishnet and the fish fell to the ground. She hurried to pick it up. She took off her gloves to help. The two of them were so close. In panic, the hands of the two of them were infinitely close to the ground, but each time there was a precise miscalculation. She looked into her eyes. She was in doubt. She thought she liked herself, but Wona was a little uncertain about this cautious look and the bottom of her body. Days went by like this. Sometimes there was a gunshot in the town. The arrested Jews and the soldiers of sumo made the atmosphere tense. One day, Jenny heard the quarrel between Wona and her colleagues. Her colleagues thought that the winner could do whatever she wanted in France, but Wona longed for peace and thought that the French also needed to be respected. This was in conflict with Germany's main consciousness. Because of this, Jenny appreciated her kindness even more. However, this night, Jenny accidentally ran into a revolutionary neighbor who tied a bomb on the bottom of his car. The discovery of this victim made her panic. She wanted to rush to the building to tell Wona, but when she stood in front of the door, she was in a whirlpool of conflict. On the one hand, she had to defend the national integrity and kill the enemy for the country. On the other hand, she was in conflict with the first love of the girl, Huai Chun. She couldn't make a choice. She was afraid of making a mistake. She tried to calm down. In the end, she stayed in front of the window all night until the next morning when she saw the two officers of the enemy walking towards the car of death. Jenny's eyes widened and her pupils shrunk. Her heart was filled with anxiety. She prayed to Wona not to fall into the trap of death. At this moment, the national integrity and the love of the girl were torn apart in her heart. Jenny knew that she had to make a choice. She rushed to the piano regardless of everything. Her fingertips were like a flying swallow. She hurriedly played Bach's music. The music was like a tight, life-saving rope. Wona was about to sell her house when she heard the strange sound of the piano. Her face was still covered with the gentle and polite sound of the rain. She hurriedly ran to the piano. She realized that today's music was very similar to the melancholy music of the past. She rushed to her heart. She saw that Jenny's eyes were golden and her mouth was open. It seemed to have thousands of words, but it was hidden in her throat. Wona tried to interpret the deep meaning of Jenny's message. Suddenly, she heard the sound of the explosion from the window. Jenny was a little greedy at first, but then she was full of anxiety. Wona also turned from fear to panic. When she came out of the door, she saw that two comrades had died, but through the fire, Wona remembered Jenny. Not long after, the neighbor couple was captured by the enemy. Jenny was heartbroken and adopted their young child. She hoped that Wona could save them. But when she rushed to the execution ground, she only met a group of soldiers with guns. Wona saw Jenny at a glance and understood her thoughts and difficulties. But Wona was just an ordinary officer in the face of this cruel situation. That night, Wona was in a low mood and didn't go to the living room as usual, but quietly picked up her luggage and planned to leave without saying goodbye. She walked heavily towards the door, but her grandfather stopped her. She slowly turned around and tried to smile at her two grandchildren in front of her. She said, "I'm leaving. Maybe it's the front line of the Naliman. It's a battlefield full of unknowns, chaos, and bloodshed." When she said goodbye, her voice trembled slightly, but it was firm. It was a sense of mission that a soldier could not escape. Finally, she left a sentence, "I wish you good night and forever." When they met for the first time, Jenny looked at Wona quietly, and her eyes were full of pain and helplessness. Although they have never explained their feelings to each other in history, their hearts have long been moving. Big tears rolled down her face, and her heart was full of sadness. It was a farewell to the coming farewell and the pain of not being able to let go of the feeling. When Wona said goodbye in the air, Jenny could no longer stand the pain and walked out the door. Regardless of everything, she moved towards the car Wona was riding. Wona slowly got out of the car and looked at Jenny. Thousands of words seemed to be frozen in her eyes. At this moment, she could only stay in her eyes and could not speak. Although there were thousands of words in Jenny's heart, in the end, there was only one sentence. This is the first sentence she said to her, but it was also the last sentence. She said all the likes she had never said, all the blessings for her future, and that deep, hidden heart, she knew it was gone, but there was still hope. It all became this goodbye. "I am cold to you because of national dignity, but I noticed that your eyes are so hard to hide. Her love is as deep as the sea, hidden in the bottom of her heart. In every subtle movement, in every deep and emotional silence, her love is as calm as water." Although she did not express it passionately, she was also silently paying attention to their love, as calm as the sea.